Speaking of Pennsylvania, not Hershey, PA. We're talking Pittsburgh. We're talking the 412.
Okay, nice.
We're talking Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah, West PA.
Mike Tomlin spoke about the criticism he's received for the lack of playoff wins. I believe the last time they won a playoff game, it was 1926. And Mike Tomlin spoke yesterday to the media and also was asked about these rumors about a potential trade for him.
I understand the nature of what it is that we do, the attention and criticism that comes with it. As a matter of fact, I embrace it, to be quite honest with you. I enjoy the urgency that comes with what I do and what we do. I don't make excuses for failure. I own it, but I also feel like I'm capable. And so as long as I'm afforded an opportunity to do that, I will continue. But I certainly understand their frustrations, and probably more importantly than that, I share it.
What's your message to any team that may reach out to the Steelers to gauge interest or availability in your services?
I have no message. Save your time.
Take that, VAR. Take that.
Well, that is a message. Save your time.
Yeah, trying to get him.
I have no message. Save your time. Save your time is a message. Save your time. That's the message. Listen, my reaction to it, I've heard a lot of different opinions on Mike Tomlin as the coach in Pittsburgh. And I just wonder, I heard one perspective from a former player that's in media, and he said just maybe.
Acho?
Maybe. No, it's same show, though.
Oh.
I would never reuse anything from that dude.
Damn.
Just so we're clear on that. Yeah, I wouldn't qualify anything he'd say. But what I would do is qualify some of the people that go on the show because, they've done something in the league. But anyway, one of those people in particular said that maybe the way that Tomlin has become a tone-deaf situation in Pittsburgh. And I stopped for a second. I was like, wait a second. That can't be right, because if a coach is a really good coach, a coach knows how to motivate you, he knows how to talk to you and reach you, then you shouldn't become tone deaf to that. But I started thinking to myself, is it possible that he's been there for so long that the way in which he handles things has become, like it's like status quo? Like, all right, coach, all right. And just maybe you need a fresh start. Maybe he needs a fresh start for how he coaches, and maybe Pittsburgh needs a fresh start in how they're being led. Like, they're having success, but their success does come to abrupt ends at the end of the year. I mean, that's a reality. And I just start I've always been, listen, if you're winning, you're closer to where you're trying to get to than further away, right? I'd rather be close and winning. All right, we had winning season. We made it to the playoffs. Let's try to keep building from there. But it seems to be just like I'm critical of Dallas, I'm going to take a moment and take a step back and think about, am I not being critical enough of Pittsburgh because of my affinity for the team and for the coach? And so when I heard this statement, maybe it's becoming, tone deaf, the way he's coaching, it would impact other players in a different locker room differently because of his reputation, his ability to coach, and what he brings to the table. And I wasn't opposed to it. Like looking at it from a non-biased eye, I was not opposed to it. In fact, I was not opposed to even thinking that you have had your best receiver kind of go down the same exact route that it's exact. A.B. Pickens, same exact thing. Your two best players. You haven't had a quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger. You've been known to be a defense team. Your defense hasn't been as good. They're giving up a ton of yards. It just seems as though it could be getting to that point where it might be time to think about if you should start maybe moving on.
That took you a long time to get to that.
That hurt. That really hurt.
I'm never one for change's sake. And I think, look, corporations, companies, they go through this all the time. where you're doing well, but you feel like you could be doing better. And that's kind of where the Pittsburgh Steelers are at. They're an unbelievable organization. Some would call them one of the standards in the NFL. You know, that's the sort of organization that as a former player, you wish you could have played for. Now, I grew up a Browns fan, so I have they're a rival to me. There's I don't want to say hatred, but definitely a strong disliking towards. So I probably would have turned that down, even though it would have been a mistake professionally. But that's just how I grew up. Like I can't get away from that. But I think the general point is, it's hard sometimes when you are a consistent winning team, you are a consistent playoff team, but you just can't find out what it is that you need to get over the hump. Because sometimes that next person you bring in, or the next two, or the next three people you bring in, they're definitely not going to be the answer. And they're not going to bring you back to a point where you're able to actually win at a consistent level and go to the playoffs every year. I mean, that's kind of the scary thing, is you make a move and you're an organization that very seldom makes moves at their coaching position. I mean, think about how long it took them to bring in Arthur Smith, just as an offensive coordinator. But my general point is, I feel like at some point, though, you have to look at it and say, do we feel like there's some other missing pieces, or is the locker room starting to lose out on the message? You know, you kind of felt like that a little bit, maybe even with Bill Belichick during his time in the New England Patriots. I mean, he's the greatest of all time. And there was an expiration on that relationship between him and Robert Kraft. And it happened to coincide with Tom Brady not being there. But even then, it just, at a certain point, you kind of have to say, okay, like we kind of ran our run. Like we got a Super Bowl out of it, but it's time to move on. I'm not necessarily advocating for it. Like I think this team, especially with Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator, and then more consistently, when it's Russell Wilson at quarterback or whoever they would bring in, like let them be there for a little bit, I think they will continue to improve. I mean, they got to figure out the Pickens situation, because you can't have a number one wide receiver as disinterested as he is. But I'm not ready to pull the Band-Aid off and say, let's just move on a different direction. I do think there's a time and a place for that. I don't think Pittsburgh's there now. I just don't.
It's almost like Belichick made it easy on them because they just sucked. And the problem is the Steelers have never sucked under Tomlin. Like they've never been just, wow, this is an awful team, to where either you would be in the running to draft a top quarterback or you would just move on. It would make the decision easier. He just somehow keeps them afloat at around 9-10 wins every year. But I don't see them trade. They don't do that. They've had 3 coaches since the 60s. The Raiders are a franchise that would do that. They've had 15 coaches since 2000. Like, it's just the difference in how Pittsburgh has done it with their coaching staff and what they've done there and their stability in comparison to some other diaper fires around the league is hilarious. And I don't see them trading the guy unless he walks away or retires like a Bill Cowher. I don't see it happening. Just don't strike me as that organization.
Well, they did the same thing. The fans, the public did the same thing to Chuck Noll at the end of his tenure. They did the same thing to Bill Cowher at the end of his tenure. So it's not new, and it's not uncommon to see just the idea of the fans and the community not being comfortable with the coach that's coaching based upon not getting the results that they want, which is Super Bowl or bust. And so while I'm not new to it, I have not been one to entertain this as it applied to Coach Tomlin because of my affinity for him. But I just wonder, if you've gotten to a point of where the way you coach and your approach to how you coach is now people have gotten so comfortable with how it works and how it is, and they're comfortable with you as the person, that way of coaching isn't as effective or impactful as it once was. I don't know that it would be considered to make a move just to make a move, to move on just to move on. I think it would be maybe something that you have to think about in terms of how effective can he be, moving into the future with this group of guys if if that message or that way, that brand, that style of coaching isn't as effective in that locker room anymore. And with that being said, the staple of what you've always been is not as good as it once was either. This Pittsburgh defense, whether we want to, us as fans want to admit it or not, it is not as good as it has been in years past. It's not.